All right, that is Nadine's current favorite song, Happiness by Need to Breathe. And we are so excited to have Nadine with us today. This is Nadine Gilkison. Hi.
Hello.
You are joining us from Indiana today. And why don't you just give a little introduction to who you are, what you teach, and a little bit about your background in education.
Sure. So I'm Nadine Gilkison, and I've been teaching for about 20 years, and I've taught grades 3, 4, and 5. Technology has always been a passion of mine, all the way back to student teaching, even the Laserdisc. That's when I started the tech integration. Thank Mrs. Linder for that, my student teacher. And I've always just had that passion for technology. So in about 2014, my district created a new position for a district technology integration specialist. And I decided to apply and got the position. And for the first 2 years, I was our entire district's technology integration specialist. So from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And then last year, we ended up hiring someone for secondary. So now I focus completely on our 7 elementary schools, serving about 250 teachers. So I always tell everyone they're my classroom now, that I try to differentiate and support.
Which is reaching how many kids, right?
Yes.
And actually, when we add in all of the teachers you work with on Twitter and Facebook, you have a much larger classroom than you think.
I have not thought about it that way. You're right.
Following.
I think you kind of became someone that we were really interested in and excited to see creating because of the work you did with K2, but you do so much more than that as well. So we're excited to hear about that today. Do you want to just start by sharing a little bit about like what's going really well for you in terms of teaching and with HyperDocs and creating, and what the actual like HyperDoc journey maybe looked like for you?
Sure. So I feel like that HyperDocs have been really successful for me because really I'll kind of talk about the journey to start out with. So I was working with, we had grade level reps from kindergarten through 5th grade that I was meeting with quarterly. At the time, a couple of years ago, we were working on curating content for digital lessons. And I was starting to think of what would be the next step, because we were using Blend Space at that point, and we were saying, you know, we want to go beyond that, but I just didn't know quite what it was. And at that time, I can't remember what book I was getting ready to buy on Amazon, but I noticed the HyperDoc handbook. It was like, hey, have you seen this? So I clicked on the link, and then I was like, wow, that sounds a lot like what I'm doing or what I'm getting ready to do. So then I hopped on your website, started finding all the HyperDocs, and just like all these light bulbs were going off saying, oh my gosh, this is where we need to go with our district. So I went to my curriculum director, talked to her about it, and she was all for it and saw that this was the natural transition for our district. And so then what it became was that those reps that I met with, I first taught them about what HyperDocs are, taught them a lot about what the qualities that came from your book. And then I said, let's go out and see what's out there for your grade levels.
Yeah.
And then I said, the next time we meet, then I'm going to start helping you create them. And that's really where it took off. And you mentioned the K-2, and what we discovered when we started looking for HyperDocs was that we could not find as many for primary.
Right.
And I just told him, I said, you know what, that's fine, because look at everything else that we found. And so now we get to help everybody out with the K-2 and so on. And I've got great teacher reps, really teachers all across the district, because it really has spread quite well.
Well, I think too, what you did, which is what good teachers do, is you find a hole or a gap or a need, and then fill that, right? That's exactly what we do in our classrooms, and that's exactly what you did. You said, great, there's all this wonderful through you know, high school stuff, but why isn't there enough for our little guys? And I love that you just went for it. You know, I really appreciate that. I think that's even when we're working with teachers and we say, they're going to create their first HyperDoc, we say, well, what's something is going to be a predictable struggle for your students, or what's the biggest need when you go to teach it year after year and the kids still don't know it? How can we teach it differently? So it's kind of that concept of like find a need and like go after it.
Right.
And I think what stood out to me first thing when I was seeing your products were you were really emphasizing the lesson design, the explore, explain, apply for that level. And you were the icons, the smiley faces.
Yeah. And we had to talk about that as reps. We were trying to decide because you guys had some templates on there, and then the teachers were used to me making templates. And I said, no, I don't have to make a template. We can do whatever. And they said, no, they wanted to have the discussion of trying to keep it kind of in the same realm for all the kids in the district. And they said, if we're going to try to do this district wide, we want a kindergartner and then a first grader and a second grader to see the same format. So that way you're not having to reteach different formats. And I said, okay, well, I'm not telling you that you have to use my template, but if you want to use it. And then they're all like, no, it was just easier because they've already got the shell of what they need to do.
There's like predictability, structure, routine.
Yeah.
And then you get to still add layers of new fun imagery on top of that. You're like building these layers, or the content might be harder. So there's a template or a structure that's predictable.
Yes. And what's been really nice for teachers, I was actually doing a kindergarten lesson this morning, and what's nice for them is that they might get really good at using one tool in isolation, but they may not realize what else is out there. And so by me putting it into a HyperDoc or another teacher putting it in there as an option, now we've piqued their interest. And they'll say, oh, I heard so-and-so was trying this with their HyperDoc. Now I want to try it. So I've had a lot more success of getting teachers to, naturally want to try other things.
Yeah. And then obviously the kids, I always appreciate that choice too.
Yes.
But again, hey, you love Flipgrid, use Flipgrid and get comfortable with that. But now let's add in. Now you have a repertoire of two things. Now we're going to add in a third thing, and so the kids have that fallback option as well. And so you're kind of demonstrating for teachers and kids that sometimes you go shopping for the right tool at the right time.
Right. Right.
I love that. So I would love to actually have you walk through some of your HyperDocs. So we can start to kind of see what you mean. That's the beauty of doing something like this versus a podcast, is we get an opportunity to actually see them in action. So I'm going to do a little screen sharing. I'm going to start off by showing what Nadine has taken as a collection of all of our HyperDocs and put them into one place. And it looks something like this. And I just love how you've even taken the image, because you've just really capitalized on your ability to learn through visual, stimuli. I think when we look at this, we're so drawn to it.
And I'll tell you that kind of where this kind of stemmed from, when I was meeting with our grade level reps, I always have to tell myself, not everybody is at the same tech ability for Google. So at the time, whenever we originally started, we were putting our HyperDocs into a folder in Google. And we had some folks that were actually, whenever they were making copies, it was going back into my folder and not theirs.
Right.
So then I said, you know what, let's just make this as easy as possible so that way anybody can use it. So I said, what if we have a doc and they see the front image? And then we automatically do that where it forces a copy. So that way we're eliminating that problem. And the teachers across the district have said that has helped them immensely.
I mean, Lisa and I, Kelly's not here, but I'm sure she would say the same thing. We still love a doc with There's so much out there and there's so much you can do, but we always come back to the simplicity of a table on a dock.
Yeah.
And you really captured that, which is great. And I think, again, you're showing your ability to find a need. They weren't really seeing what was out there in the folder.
Right.
We struggle with that. We've learned that people go shopping in different ways. Some would prefer to go to Facebook and just throw a question out there. Some prefer our website where you can search the tagging system. But there's something about this that appeals to so many teacher learners, if you will. Just visually, I get a little snapshot. Ooh, that looks good. I want that.
Yes.
So something that you've curated that way. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are going to walk us through. Sorry, there's a little bit of an echo. Hopefully you guys can hear it okay. One of your more recent HyperDocs. And this one is consonant letter sounds.
Yes. So I actually did this as a lesson this morning in a kindergarten classroom. And so they hadn't done as much with HyperDocs. So I had all the students start out where we clicked all on the Explore together, told them to put on their headphones. And I said, I'm going to give you just a few minutes to watch the videos. And then after that point, then I said, all right, now we're ready to go to the explain. And we talked about how there's different options. We went ahead and went into a flip grid where they had to respond about what they know about letter sounds. Then we moved into the apply section. I modeled the first one with them. That's why you see the M already in the box. And it's kind of hard to see when you're showing it, but there's other letters that are on the side of the slide. So then after they would do that, then I gave the students some time to complete the other slides on their own. Yeah, there you go. So then I was showing them how they select it, and then they use the arrows to go ahead and move it into the box themselves.
I love that.
Then we had a time where at the end that we did the quizzes. And we ended up doing it whole class because they hadn't done one before, but I did reiterate to the teacher that they could do it as a station. We talked to the kids about, at that point, then you get to the create, and now they get to create something where it says, I want them to add their own picture and add the text boxes for their classmates to choose the correct letter sound. I always integrate Seesaw a lot for the creation component because I tell teachers that I feel like that's the easiest one to get started with, where students get lots of choice. Yeah. The kids loved it this morning, and the teachers really like when I come in and I do a lesson like that because, yes, I want it to be personalized, but if they've never done it, they need to have that starting point, and they need to see, how do I work through this? So we talked about it as a class, and I said, okay, then you would start by watching a video, then going to the next slide, and then transitioning on.
Right. So you're modeling how to teach with HyperDocs.
Yes.
Kind of as what's happening as well. So yes, there's content. Yes, there's kids learning with you, but there's this added layer of like, this is what it feels like to teach in this way.
Yes.
I want you to walk through another one, but you're making me wonder, are there certain questions that come up while you're demoing how to teach with HyperDocs that teachers generally have? Like some questions?
One of the questions that I get, I had to explain to them where I'll have a link to Flipgrid or to Padlet. I was doing a PD this morning, and I had to tell the teachers, now you got to make sure you're opening up the HyperDoc and you're adding links to your Flipgrid or your Padlet. And they've told me that there's been times that they forgot to do that. And so then I'll just say, delete the assignment on Google Classroom, fix it, and then resend it out.
Right.
To this. That's a question I get quite often.
Right. I mean, we do get a lot of questions about workflow, and that's such a personal thing to every single person's classroom, and once they kind of get into a rhythm, they work through some of those kinks,
Right.
But I was just curious, since you're demoing teaching with HyperDocs so often, if there was like a trend, but that would make sense. Okay, do you want to walk us through this awesome math lesson?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, there's so much goodness here. So
when I was working with the reps, this HyperDoc was actually created by Andy Rhodes, who is a 5th grade teacher over at South Creek Elementary in Franklin Township. And so when they met with me, I told them to pick an Indiana standard that was coming out, not that they were working on currently, but it would be coming up. So that way they were helping to create a HyperDoc that would help all 5th grade. So when Andy and I did that, on the second slide, you'll notice that we have them add in the Indiana standard. After that, then he went through and he chose videos that go along with that topic. He layered in, you're going to notice in 5th grade that it gets more in depth. So if he wants them to do a flip grid, I said, we're trying to help out all teachers in the district. So I said, be specific, because there may be someone that's not as techie as you that's going to use this HyperDoc. So that's why he has in there the complete directions. You know, if you're going to do a flip grid, this is exactly what I want you to do in it. Then when we go into the apply, we talk about different areas that they can include. And Andy did a great job of having it where the students actually doing the problem on the slide and typing in the answer in there.
Click on the little box and
yes. Yeah. And then we layered in on the next slide, we had a link to quizzes, but again, it's just an option, you know, if a teacher wants to do that one or not. And I just tell teachers, if that's not one that you want to do, then just delete the slide.
Right.
On slide 7 on his create, I had a kindergarten teacher comment to me this morning how much that they really liked that when Andy created his. Again, on the create, we're trying to give them some guidelines on what we want them to do. But she said, you know, I hadn't thought about putting X's over the options I don't want them to do. She was commenting that kindergarten, it was like overwhelming. It was just too many.
Right.
And so that was really good for her when she saw that.
Yeah. It's like too much of a good thing.
Yeah. She was like, I felt like I was explaining like 5 things at once. And she said, I'm really glad that you're showing us different ways that teachers are creating them.
Right. Kind of like what we were saying before is teaching the kids the right tool at the right time or the right way to show what you know when it's appropriate. Like this video is going to be a great way if you're, you know, getting your ideas out loud, or an image is going to be great if you need to visually, you know, so you're almost teaching, that's like another layer of what you're teaching kids.
Right.
Making those choices and why the purposefulness to what we do.
Right.
Okay. I love that.
Oh, we have a comment from Sean Fahey. He loves the template you've created.
I love Sean.
Well, and I'm going to stop changing it.
We have a couple comments right now. Ms. Cliffel, she loves the visual layout of the HyperDocs. When using with students, they soon learn what is expected from them. So.
Good.
And Sean's a Hoosier.
Yes.
And he's doing a lot of work with math now. So
right.
I think what you've done with this teacher you're working with is really, I think sometimes people think, oh, I can't do it with math. And it's like, no, there's a lot of ways to make the math visual and to give students different ways to show what they know.
Yes.
In a content area that has such a finite answer.
Yes.
So it's almost.
Well, and a lot of teachers have asked me, you know, how do I integrate this, you know, when I'm wanting to meet with small groups?
Yeah.
And I said, that's another way that you need to be looking at HyperDocs, because while you're working with that small group, this is what, you know, some of the other students can be working on at the same time. So it's been really well.
Kelly and I used to always say how, you know how you always wanted to go over a math test with a couple of kids and you never had time?
Yeah.
And it's like when we say small group in math, they could be working on a math HyperDoc or, you know, even a text set or even just the explore section. And you just have time now to check in with those kids that
right
are stuck still on yesterday's content. So I love that. That's like a real solution, I think, to busy teachers' lives. Love that. Did you, let me go back to this one HyperDoc. I'm not sure if we wrapped it up yet. I want to give you a chance to talk through the whole thing so people can really see it all the way through here.
Yeah, on that one, I got all the way through.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay. You guys are so great about giving credit. Okay, so another one we thought would be fun to highlight is your stop motion HyperDoc.
Yes. So with the stop motion animation HyperDoc, I really wanted to make sure that it was designed for any kid so that they could use it and learn about stop motion animation on their own. So basically, if you're a younger student, what I did was I recorded the information from each slide. And there's a little video that they can tap on that's off to the side that they can click and it will read the instructions to them. And I wanted kids to know that there's lots of different ways that they can do stop motion animation. Now, if I go in to do this as a lesson, which I actually was in a 5th grade classroom, I had a teacher request this as a lesson. We went in and we got to explore each one of these. And we ended up doing the Google Slides method. And And the kids really enjoyed it because they hadn't really thought about how it could morph into what they were doing with the American Revolution. Right. And I'll have to send you guys some samples. She just sent me some great student samples, but she sent me an email saying that the kids had more fun doing that project, and they're constantly asking if they can work on it because they want to learn more about different types of stop motion.
That is absolutely a sign of success, right? Anytime the students say, "Can I have more time? Can we work on that still?"
Yes. Yes.
We run a film festival in our district, and I think what you've done here is make it so maybe I could get some 2nd and 3rd grade students to submit, because I think sometimes they don't feel like they can, and just kind of you've made it all so accessible.
Yes.
For teachers and kids that thought, oh, that's just something that Johnny does. It's like, no, we can all.
Right.
It doesn't have to just be your personal passion. Let's talk.
Right. And I think what's important too, like the teacher that reached out to me, she's like, I haven't done stop motion. I don't know much about it, but I know it's something that the kids would enjoy. Right. And so if I can help create a resource for them so that they are going to attempt to do something like that, then I always feel like that's part of my job too.
And I think too, what you do is use the sides of your slide template. And we say it's not a presentation. Slides is so much more, and you really utilize space in a way where you can like meet all the kids' needs.
I love that video that you have. I keep going, listen to the directions. So you made a video to give them instructions for how to deal with that slide.
Yeah.
That is the best idea.
I always say, like, you multiply yourself, right? You just multiplied yourself.
Yeah.
I think I need to do that on my first slide for teachers, like how to utilize how to teach with this slide deck.
Yes.
Or how to prepare it for your own use, so you're not utilizing someone else's links, or how you can set it.
So right. I've actually started doing that more. I don't know if you want to pull up the other one that I have, that Justify.
Oh yeah, let's pull that up. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't remember if I have a video of myself in there.
Let me go back to screen sharing here. Okay. Yeah, it would be off in the margin. Here it is.
Yeah. So I started doing that.
It's like you're hiding it. There's more. There's more. It's hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started doing that more and more, because then if I had a teacher that would ask a question, or they're like, well, the lesson didn't go as well for me. Well, if I can't get to you to do the lesson, okay, then watch me, because I'm going to talk through what I did, and, maybe that will help you. And I have gotten a lot of good feedback that the teachers are like, yes, that's what I needed. That's what really helps me.
I love it. We say we're going to do it all the time, and we don't. And you are doing it.
Yes.
And it's like, we call it the little PD on your shoulder. You're like whispering into them,
I like that.
I love that.
It's so great. Hey, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Vicki Nelson, and Vicki was in
Vicki.
our boot camp in June.
Vicki.
And she has a great question. She says, what's your experience using HyperDocs with special education students? I teach high school resource and find my students have a wide array of tech skills.
Our special ed uses HyperDocs all the time. Actually, we had told our teachers that, kind of like how we have that grid where it goes kindergarten through 5th, we'll tell them we're trying to not HyperDoc the kids to death.
Yes.
So basically what I've kind of told everybody as a guide, so if we've said that this is a 3rd grade HyperDocs that's based on 3rd grade standards, I don't want you, if you're in 2nd grade, I don't want you to use that for your enrichment. Don't just say, well, I'm just going to use this. I said, then when the kid gets in there next year, they're going to go, I already did this. Yeah. I said, but I want you to think about how you can go backwards if you have a student that hasn't mastered a standard yet. So that's where I talk to our SPED group and I say, hey, look at all of these resources that we've created for these standards. And what if you have a student that needs help with telling time or something like that? Take a look at what we've already created. And there's nothing wrong if a student needs additional support to go back and use those.
Right. That's great. So it's this, it's kind of like one size doesn't fit every student, every class, but you can to find the right thing. But
and I actually met with our SPED department last year, and I met with the folks that run like our SIP, our lowest, and they were very excited to see what we had for kindergarten and 1st grade.
So I actually was at a curriculum intervention training this morning, and we were talking about how to meet those needs of our kids that don't learn it from this one and done reteach lesson, because our curriculum it's got one, it's great, go teach this lesson, but that still isn't working. So they need to learn it in a different way. And I think that's where HyperDocs comes in. You're going to learn the content in a totally different way than how maybe you would have traditionally been taught. And so potentially like your tier 2, tier 3 kind of like, ability to reach kids, because now it's, you can listen to it, you can, read closed captioning, you can see it, you can do it, you can manipulate it online, it's like, okay, so we didn't have those opportunities before.
Right.
And so I think that's another awesome thing about what we've got going here. Did you want to walk us through this justifying with video-based evidence? Because I think this is really neat, and I think a lot of teachers would really enjoy trying this out. I know I want to try it out.
This actually happened because I came across on Facebook that they have a channel called like Constantly Curious, and I saw one of the videos that was on there, and I was like, man, this is on Facebook, but I bet it's on YouTube as well. And it was. And when I found it, I started to realize, students do so much where they watch a video, but we haven't talked as much about how do you pull text evidence from a video. So really creating a lesson to go along with that went really well. I modeled with the first one where it has, I think it's the hiccups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what causes it? Why do we hiccup? So I modeled that one together, did that one as my mini lesson. We explained what we were looking for. And then what I did was I allowed the students after that point, I said, look, I'm going to give you 10 minutes and you get to choose any one of these videos. And I said, there's over 50 in here. So you got plenty of student choice. And then after that, then I said, I'm going to give you the 10 minutes for you to watch the video and explain, some video-based text evidence. And the main reason why I did the timing with it is because I knew that we were approaching state testing. Mm-hmm. And I knew that doing things under a time limit, that kids needed more practice with that. So instead of just saying, well, pick one and spend however long. And that worked really well. And the kids absolutely loved it. They kept saying, oh my gosh, we're not done with this, are we? And so I talked to the teachers. I'm like, hey, look, just because I did this today doesn't mean you can't cycle back and use this again.
Okay, these are amazing. I'm stuck on why is ketchup so hard to pour. I feel like a kid right now. I'm like, I want to do this one. No, I want to do this one. Okay, I'll do both of them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You're kind of like sneaky. Oh, I have to do the gluten one. You're definitely sneaking in more engagement, and you tell them, oh, you only have to do X amount, but they're going to do more, right?
Yes. And they really, really love doing it. And another thing that we do is we tell the kids at the end, I said, I want you to share what you wrote, and then we have to figure out which video that you did. So that works really effective at the end of the lesson.
So they say that last part again. So
they'll read their explain, like their little paragraph that they wrote that has their text evidence. And I said, we should be able to figure out which video that it is if you wrote it well enough. And so then the kids have a great time trying to figure out which video that a student did.
I love it. Such a unique way to share your learning at the end.
Yeah.
And they have to pay attention to someone else, really think and synthesize. I love it.
Yeah.
The time is flying. I have a quick question for you. Nadine, do you do your HyperDocs collaboratively, or do you do most of them where the kids have their own copy?
It's where most of them are where the kids have their own copy.
And then do you use any great tricks for your design, like inserting images as a background so they can't delete things? We have a question about your collaborative working with students about not deleting each other's work, or
Yes.
I've played around with that a lot, even when they have their own copy, to not delete my lesson, actually.
Yeah. When they're working collaboratively, we talked to them about, we've tried different strategies where we'll assign certain slide numbers and we'll say, this is your slide number to work on. I've actually had kids add their picture. They insert a picture of themselves on the slide to try to help out with that. I do know that if I kind of resorted more to the make a copy for each student just because of those kind of issues with the collaborative. If I have a student that accidentally gets rid of it, then worst case scenario, I go back to file revision history and go back to the very beginning. Or if I have to go back into Google Classroom, it'll let them make a copy of it. So, and those things happen when I'm in the room with teachers, which is great. Because then they're like, what do I do? And I'm like, okay, it happens all the time. This is what you do. So I think when they see how I handle it, then that really helps them out a lot. You guys mentioned something about the graphics and so on. So I use the add-on in Google Slides, Unsplash. So my mom was an artist, and I've always liked graphic design and digital design. So I always try to mix, and when I work with teachers, I tell them I try to mix in like real live images, photographs with clip art, because I think sometimes it's too much of one or the other. So I try to help teachers out with that. Unsplash is amazing because they're all royalty free. I use that a lot for backgrounds. The Bitmoji extension, I've been encouraging teachers to use that. The Emoji One, that's where you see that I get a lot of images as well that are in there.
Awesome. I think too, like you've also even done a little bit of work around creating those master slides where the kids can't edit the background. Can you talk about that? That's a
yes. So whenever we have a slide that we know that we don't want the kids to mess up. So in particular, the primary template that I made, the teachers asked me. So what I did was on the original, I just saved that individual slide as a JPEG, and then I inserted it as a background. So now I tell all my primary teachers, I'm like, okay, so when we're making this, what are the things that you don't want to move, that you don't want them to mess up? Then we'll make that the background. And then we start to layer in the other things that are on the top of it.
It's so smart, because really what you're doing is balancing design with like what works in the classroom, and all the different kids who come in with like, I moved that, just very responsive to our learners. Some of them being adults ourselves need some of those tips and tricks. I think too, like, people can sometimes scoff at design, but at the end of the day, it's our job as teachers to design memorable learning experiences for kids. And so the design really does help. Even on this, justifying using the evidence from the videos, there's 50 examples on there, and it's the same slide, and the only thing you've switched out is the video. And so what you're saying is that with any video, like the mass quantity that you have on there, with any video, you're going to do the same thing.
Yes.
The design is stayed the same on purpose, and there's real intent behind that choice.
Yes.
So I think really what you remind us of is the fact that like we design with all these things in mind, with like the lesson flow and who's going to be on there and what's going to make it memorable and what are they going to actually do. And there's some things that are consistent and it's been routine, and then some that are new and exciting.
Yeah.
So I think you've just really captured what we believe is like the joy of lesson design with kids in mind. So you need to like toot your own little horn for a minute here and tell everyone what's been going on and what's up and coming, so we know how to follow you and stay connected with.
So I applied to do the People's Choice for ISTE to present, and right now I'm in the final round. I submitted the rest of the presentation, so I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that I get chosen to speak on Sunday at ISTE. And if I do, then I'll be talking about personalized learning in the K-2 classroom and going more in depth with that. So I'm excited if I get the opportunity to do that. I'm always sharing out everything that I make. So just find me on Twitter or on the Facebook group. I try to remember to tag it in all places. Sometimes I forget. But it truly, I mean, I think it really opened my eyes to take a position where I was district wide. And then now, you know, since I got involved in Twitter over the years, just being able to see. This afternoon, I had someone tell me on Twitter that they were using the Olympic HyperDocs STEM activity, and they were in New York. And my face was just beaming. It's not just about what kind of a lesson can we design for the kids in our own district. It's teachers want to be good teachers everywhere. So why not help everyone? So I don't mind doing it.
You just summed up everything we believe in so clearly. That was great.
I think you've inspired a lot of teachers to not only try teaching with HyperDocs, but also to try creating, especially for our youngest kids. Like the whole, you know, what is this? Yeah, littles can too.
Yeah.
I think you've created real lessons for them to actually see, oh,
good.
They can. And like, I know you've got 4 kids, 3 of them under 8, and you're thinking, okay, what would I want my kids to be doing?
Yes.
And how do I take something that's going to be hard for them and make it just more engaging?
Yes. Yeah, they'll come home from school and talk about, well, you know, I struggled with this. And my first thought is, ooh, I'll make a HyperDoc on that. So I get out the Chromebooks and the kids are, I'm like, okay. You'll hear my kids' voices on directions and things too. I'm like, here, come here. They love it too.
I love it.
Well, people are really appreciative in the comments about all your sharing in the Facebook group. Melissa, hi Melissa. She said, thank you. I received all your emails, attended a workshop earlier this year at CIESC, and it really opened your eyes. Amazing. People just can't, I talk about that all the time. Nadine, you are amazing how much you share. And there, you live it. You don't just talk about it. You really do. So, thank you.
Like collections and collections of work that are, like I said, you think you have 250 teachers, which is X amount of kids, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. You're the very heart of the work that we believe in. So thank you.
Yeah. So if we have to vote you up for your session, let us know. We have a whole group of followers that will vote you.
All right.
Keep us posted for sure. Yeah,
I will.
Whole cheering committee. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
It's the end of the day for you there, and you know, you've got a family to get home to, and HyperDocs is great.
Yeah. Thank you for joining in again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this has been a great chance to talk and get to see all of your work. Thank you.
And Kelly sends her love too. So
we'll tell her I said we missed her.
Thanks again. And
all right. Thanks, ladies.
We'll see you on Twitter and Facebook.
All right. Bye.
Bye.